Hi, we're the K3. I'm Jen.
I'm Marisa, and you are part of this Kdrama Coffee Break.
And this is our finale series, The Red Sleeve Cuff, where we're going to dive into the series, The Red Sleeve Cuff, starring Junho and Seyoung. So much to talk about. Join us. Marisa.
Jen.
The Red Sleeve Cuff was epic, right?
It really was. And it came out just before the holidays. So, there's just the air is a little sparklier at that time of year. So to have this K-drama to sink our teeth into was really, really satisfying in so many ways.
Yeah. And it was long, it was 17 episodes. So if you are coming to this podcast to just kind of see what this was all about, this is a historical K-drama. It is considered a sageuk. It is based on Jeongjo of Joseon and his royal concubine, Yibin. And so it's kind of their whole story and how they got to where they got to. And it was 17 episodes. And at the end, what were your first thoughts with it, Marisa?
My first thoughts with the drama. Okay, obviously this is spoilers. It's called the finale series. We have watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
So if that wasn't clear,
yeah,
we will be talking about details, from beginning to end. My first thoughts when I first watched the drama were that, this is light and fun. And what is Lee Seyoung doing in this? Because we know her from Kairos. We know her from The Crowned Clown. She's been a big star since she was a child actor.
Yeah.
But she usually, in our eyes, does stuff that's a little meatier. So I wasn't sure. I knew something was coming. I didn't know what.
We traveled so far from episode 1 to episode 17 that it's so hard. I just had a really hard time distilling my thoughts into a cohesive pattern because I want to just talk the finale, but there was so much that led to the finale that it's just really hard. And yeah, she was a little girl, quote unquote, at the beginning. And how did she get from being this little girl who loved being a court maid to going through all the facets to end up a first rank concubine? That's an epic journey.
Yes.
Of this woman. And I felt that it was what I really enjoyed about the show from the beginning was the inside look of being a court lady, because I don't think we get that very often.
No, and how you live in the palace. That's something we see over and over again. We know that being born in the Joseon era, being born a woman in the Joseon era, and then finding yourself with what seems like a really great career job, that'll take care of you for your entire life, also has a 50-50 chance that you'll survive out of your mid-20s. So the way we know that she was going to be his favorite royal concubine. So yes, what is the trajectory that she had to travel? Where were the writers and the female writer and female director going to take us? We know this is based on a novel written by Kang Mi-kang, but it's not available in English. So we knew that there was already a map to the show, but we didn't know where it was going to end, if it was going to end happily, or if it was at what point in her life would this drama end?
Right.
But at first it's light and playful. Actually, let me back up. At first, it's not, because they start with the death of a royal concubine. Hello, that should have been a clue.
Yeah, it really should have been. Yeah,
but it was kind of scary, for this young girl, to be facing the king.
Exactly.
Where she shouldn't have been.
Right. And I thought that the thing that I liked about what they did, especially at the beginning, which, we've watched a bunch of historicals. We've been watching K-dramas for almost, 5 years now. And I really enjoy historicals. And I think you do too. And we like learning the history of Korea. And obviously a historical, it's always, based on history, quote unquote, and all that kind of stuff. But learning the history and learning the different, I did not realize, and maybe I should have. I knew that being a court maid had a lot of limitations. I did not realize that they were theoretically, when you are assigned, and was it all court maids are considered married
Property?
to the king? I knew property, but I didn't realize married to the king, and therefore it was punishable to death if you were to have a relationship with somebody else. I did not realize that.
I guess what I understood. I guess what I understood was that their lives belonged to the palace, and they would not marry unless they had been, you know, for whatever reason, ejected, let go,
right,
from the palace. But most of the time, if you were serving someone in the palace and they were found guilty of some treasonous act, you would also be put to death. So,
which is how Deokim's father and how she ended up a court maid, is because her father served Prince Sado, and so when he was murdered or killed in the rice chest, they then killed his guards, and so that's why she ended up being adopted by Sado's wife and then handed over to a court maid, if I understood that correctly, right?
Yes, that's right. But at the same time, she was educated.
Yeah.
Because she was, you know, serving. She had friends. She had, and this is what I think we loved most about the show, was that it is about women finding their agency whilst being trapped in the palace.
Yes.
And that's meaty, juicy stuff to explore.
God, yeah.
Right?
And I think we talked about it when it happened, when Deokim finds out from the head court maid that she basically has been groomed with all that education and that knowledge to be set up as the crown prince's concubine. And the look on her face, I kind of felt like up until that point, that was when she decided that was never going to happen. Like up until that point, I think if it would have just been a natural progression, she might have entertained it. But the second she found out that she was teed up, almost offered to the crown prince, as that, like, I feel like that was part of her, part of the equation in her head.
Oh yeah, and the other part of that equation is that because then she would be loyal to Court Lady Joe, and who we discover the fairy palace, and the secret society. Yeah. So, and that is when we understood why Lee Se-young was in this drama.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like that was the moment. Like that was the. I mean, yeah. That was the moment where it kind of all turned, I thought.
That's right. So we've got this introduction of a lot of different women in a lot of different positions in the palace. You've got the young court ladies, you've got the head court ladies who have defined survival and agency and power and decisions in their own ways, some destructive, some complacent. You've got the princesses, you've got the older princess, the sister of Sado, who, and then you've also got the Queen Dowager, the young queen, who I think got married to, I've been calling him Grandpa Jonah in my head.
Right.
Yeah. And just how these women survive with some sort of, I don't want to keep reusing the word agency, but some sort of comfort in their own place. Like, how do you accept where you are and not constantly be threatened?
Absolutely. And I think it was those core four friends that kind of brought that. I thought that also kind of was amplified by watching the fourth friends through the course of the 17 episodes, where they started, where they, you know, kind of what ended up happening, and then where they all ended up. And so I thought that core four friends really, really, by the time you get to the end, one is the head court maid, right? One, so she's taken over from Court Lady Joe. One is the one is our girl who is the first concubine rank, right? But she's also passed away, but she also gave birth to the crown prince. You have one that basically had a relationship with someone outside and got murdered, got assassinated, or basically murdered for it because it's against,
imprisoned and found guilty. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's against the law for that to happen. And then another one just died of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she just died of natural causes. I forget exactly how she died. Yeah.
I believe so.
And so it's like each of the four even covered the four ways in which one could exit the castle, what am I saying? Exit the palace as a court lady, right?
Right. And what you also see is their journey. From the beginning, the things that threatened them were, having books that they weren't supposed to have, or a tiger, which is a pretty good CGI tiger, I have to say.
Right. They did a nice job with that one. Yes.
They did a nice job. Yeah. This outside threat. And slowly you start to introduce these ideas that the threat is within, like the call is coming from inside the house.
Right.
That it's that betrayal, the utmost betrayal, like your fellow court ladies who you thought you were in it together with them. The betrayal there was just huge. And then slowly, the threats are, much more personal.
Yeah.
Love becomes a threat. It's not the safe place. Oh God.
You're not allowed to love freely. Oh God.
Right. So what we thought all right. Again, it started off light and frothy, and then it's just slowly over time. By the time we get to the end of the show, it's like, holy heck. I feel like my insides have been squeezed and turned inside out.
Yeah, it took me almost 2 weeks to finish the show because I was like, I knew where it was going because I've been following Wikipedia. Not following. It's not like Wikipedia was like being updated weekly. Like the history is there. I already knew what was going to happen. I knew what year it was going to happen. So as soon as they flashed 1786 in episode 17, I was like, damn it. This is when it all goes to shit.
That's right. Because we invested so much in their relationship. And
so speaking of their relationship, the top two stars that I feel like we've only mentioned briefly, but you got to know, man, it's Junho and Seyoung. Like they were on fire. They were so good.
Yes, they deserved that MBC best couple. Did you know that about South Korea, that the major networks have award shows for their own shows?
It's hilarious because sometimes there's only like two.
Yeah, because I think this past year was just Red Sleeve and The Veil.
Right? So I wonder who will win. Most romantic couple. Let me think about that for a second. But regardless, they should win it. In my opinion, from just a chemistry standpoint, watching them work together, you wanted them to like run away together. Except even the king was like, I don't know how else to live. Like, I've never even thought about it. Like, that was not even part of the equation. Like,
right.
So that was just not part of it. But they just had their chemistry was just ridiculous, which I think is what did take this drama from a solid historical drama to that next level. I think their chemistry is what made it the next level kind of drama.
Yeah. And Lee Junho had definitely, like, when he came back from the military, he was definitely he was making his mark. Like really leveling up to that next place. And so then this smart man or his manager, whoever chose this role for him. But to be partnered with Lee Seyoung, who, as we've seen, clearly brings out the best in her acting partners.
She really does. She's got such a presence that it's just, and I know a lot of people, and I've seen it on Twitter a lot where, and I think you've seen it on Instagram a lot too, but most of it because, I mean, as much as it's a historical and it's romantically based, like a lot of it's women being really into Lee Junho. But for me, it was more Lee Seyoung's journey, the show, that was what made the story resonate for me more than it was Junho or their relationship per se.
Absolutely. Because both of them had multiple relationships, but the relationships that Lee Seyoung or Deokim had with the other women in the palace were really important. And one of the other stars of this drama, Jang Hae-jin, as court lady, so she was just so great. And my God, the the variety of roles that she's played that have, since Parasite, like to go from that to Crash Landing on You to
Right?
True Beauty and this,
Yeah.
it's the resume of a character
Oh.
actor, like supreme. It's just
And
fantastic.
she makes it look effortless. Like she can make it. She had that scene at the end, which I mean, I talked about a million, like over and over again in our live, but that scene at the end where she's so emotional after Deokim dies and the king's choosing a new concubine, and the king, they bring in all these Deokim copies, and he loses he's like, kick them all out. And she gets upset because she's like, is it wrong that I was happy that he chose someone that wasn't anything like her? And she starts to cry. That was the only time in a very tragic hour and 40 minutes where I was like, oh God, she's so good. Because it was so truthful. Like she's just so good in that moment. But then the flip side is when the king is calling that Deokim's going to come to his bedchambers. Like it was even comedic the way she was like, yeah, Tona, what? What? Like she could make you do, she had the ability to do both, and very realistically, and I just thought she was amazing.
That's right, because there's kind of this innocence and ignorance to her character, but she knows everything and she chooses not to acknowledge it. So to play those multiple levels, like really literally takes a SAG award winning actress.
Oh, so. She's just so unbelievably good. And then we got to revisit with Jung Hee-jin from our sister from Flower of Evil, who we love so much.
Such strength and verve, and with this royal comportment that just you knew she was going to survive and to be just fine, even though she was probably a 15-year-old bride to Grandpa Jonah, right? Yeah,
right. What I loved about the way they played her, the way her character was portrayed and presented, was that she could be very strong and very savvy. But she didn't tip over into like machinations. Like I feel like a lot of times they always make the Queen Dowager like this big like machinations person and like borderline the evil mother-in-law role kind of a thing. Yeah. And so I really enjoyed that she almost had a friendship and a sibling relationship with the Crown Prince and then the King. When Isan finally became the king.
And then we also have the actress who played Isan's mother, Kang Malgum, who played Hae Bin Hong, who, again, 2021 was a phenomenal year for her. She was in Sell Your Haunted House as Jang Ara's, partner in ghost crimes. And then she was in The Silent Sea.
I was just going to say, taking it back to the women in the show, I found it really interesting that the women, even though they're theoretically disposable, for lack of a better word, like the Dowager, Queen Dowager and Mom, they were the two that made it to the end. like they outlasted everyone. And tragic as that is, they also, I mean, I really appreciated that insight into what was happening in the palace.
Yeah. They were able to stand their ground.
Yeah.
Because knowing the little bit of history that we do, the palace, Prince Sado, his father, the king, it was a very, very volatile time. Whereas when Isan ascends the throne, what you eventually have is a kingdom, and they drove this point home over and over again in 16 and 17, is that you have a kingdom that's in Renaissance and, that is flourishing. But he could only do that by getting rid of his enemies, and one of whom was played by Kang Hoon, who he thought was his most loyal friend and advisor, and turned out not to be so much, which we knew. They showed that to us in episode 1. So we're just waiting for that other shoe to drop. But Kang Hoon did an amazing job. Because so good looking, can't trust him.
No. I mean, that scene where it all comes to a head and he is going to have him killed.
Executed. Yeah.
Executed. Thank you. Was probably one of the most powerful scenes in the whole series to me. Because it was just, and I feel bad saying that because I love the women in this show so much, but this scene with like all of like 8 dudes in a room. It was like, but I feel like this was the one time that all the men could drop the military ruling bravado that they have, and they like finally got to the meat of what was happening. And it was just such an amazing scene. And then to have the bodyguard, Oh Dae-hwan, the actor's name, drop to his knees and like beg for his life because he knows that that's what the king would want. Like, I just thought it was just such a powerful scene for these characters that it really resonated. It really stuck with me for a while.
Well, I think also Kang Hoon was a different kind of slimy, untrustworthy advisor, because he was so much more complex than what we often get with a K-drama, where the bad guy is the bad guy and there's no other colors to him. Whereas you saw his character as a child fight for his own survival by being an opportunist from a really young age, and understanding that, I can read the room, I can see what's happening here, and how can I make this benefit me? And that he takes his good looks and forces the court maids to give up information, and that Deokim's character is smart enough to see that, where some of the other ones are just so blinded by his handsomeness. So a really complex character, not just your typical easily drawn bad guy. So which made that scene resonate in a heavier way. Yeah. Because it's like he was fighting for his survival.
Yeah. Like it was a thing was like, I didn't think of him as all bad. Like he was just a politician, and he was working the angles to make sure that his agenda got pushed through, to the point of even using his sister, even though she died suddenly and horribly. And, like there was so much there that I just, it was super juicy and just, it was just the acting across the board, regardless of any quibbles that I do have, was just so top notch in this show from top to bottom. It was a magnificently crafted and executed drama.
That's right. Like it wasn't just the 2 stars and everybody else. That really everyone brought their A game. I wouldn't. It was a bit of an ensemble piece. Listen, when you see Jung Hae-jin in a show, then you know that the directors and the producers have elevated the other characters. And it's not just about your male lead and your female lead. We also haven't mentioned Park Ji-young playing the head court lady Jo, the head of the fairy palace.
Yes.
Oh my God. She was frightening, and yet I would probably follow her till the ends of the earth. It's like, you put your trust in her, even though she's doing evil things. She was magnificent.
She's magnificent. And even her story, I think that's what was, for me, this, if you really break this show down, there were stories within stories within stories. Like it was more than just one. It was more than just the king and his concubine story and how they got there. I mean, it was the old king and his palace lady, and how he betrayed her because he knew that that would not work, and how that rage is what drove everything else. And it's such a huge piece of the story, and they gave it the full attention, even to her death scene, where the king finally apologizes to her, and he's like, "You're not going to get my tears," and then she kills herself, and then he's sobbing over her, and it was just, there was just so much. She was just so magnificent. You're right. Like I would have thought, I would have been a fairy lady all day long if I would have been in that court. Are you kidding? Absolutely.
Like every character had a rich story, which just makes it even more heartbreaking by the time you get to the end. Oh my God. All right. Let's talk about, we've been talking a lot about so many, because this show is so much more complex than so many dramas that we've seen, which is why by the end of the year, everyone who's part of our Kdrama Coffee Break, who is coming to our live chats on YouTube, was just gushing over this show. It hit a lot of different levels in all of us.
Unless this was like a multi-part podcast, it'd be so hard to touch on everything. So this is mostly just kind of a deeper dive than our live. And then if you are interested at all, you can go check out our video on YouTube for our live chat that we just had with our coffee break crew. And there's a lot of comments there that are going to give you other insights, and maybe you'll find a few new Red Sleeve / Kdrama friends, because it was an amazing conversation that we had this Sunday about it.
So let's talk a little bit more about the other things that we love. There was a tangerine scene, which just had provided so much clarity into their relationship. And it took a beat, and they both just kind of looked at each other. And I don't want to give away all the surprises, but it was a moment, and it was a fantastic moment.
It was. I will yes and that, because one of my favorite moments in episode 17 was when he got delivered the dumpling bowls from the new concubine, and then he flashed back to when Deokim made him like these god awful dumplings. And this is more me just enjoying the two of them as humans, but you can totally see Seyoung breaking in the middle of that scene, watching him try to eat these dumplings, where like it was so like Deokim like always would enjoy and hang out, but you could see it was more Seyoung kind of like breaking, like, oh my God, he's gonna have to eat a second bowl, and look at the size of this stuff. Like it was just, I know. And that's what I loved about their coupling, was you could tell that at the end of the day, they were probably really good friends as well.
Yeah, you could see it, like you said, you could see it shine through, like just this real moment where he's just like, It was just, it was kind of quiet, and just the two of them over the dinner table, and it was funny and lovely.
Yeah. Right?
And the messiest mandu you've ever seen. It was just, It was hilarious.
Like it was, that was probably one of my favorites. There's just so many, they had so many great moments that it makes it I think that's what made the harder moments even harder for me, because they kind of seem jarring to me.
Yeah, we mentioned this in one of our live chats on our YouTube channel, but their kind of hideaway was the same location that Cha Eun-woo was in Rookie Historian KThree.
Oh yeah, and they shot it from almost the exact same angle, so I could never like break out of my Rookie Historian. Like I kept waiting for Cha Eun-woo to be like, "Hey, let me write you a story." All right, I'll be your travel blogger. Like it was hilarious. Yeah.
I think there's a shot on Instagram that Kang Hoon posted. It's in a palace location, but it's actually currently in the middle of the city. So there are like office buildings all around it, which I guess they were painted out.
Right, sure.
Like, here's the thing when you're watching a historical, is that it's written from, and we are watching it from 2021 or 2022. We're watching it from a modern perspective as modern women. And so it is fascinating to consume these stories of women trying to find purpose and find their agency and to find control. And that's the thing I love the most about this show.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Like I loved that Deokim went from being the resident transcriber and reader and making a living that was storyteller, and using that skill throughout, right?
Yes. That scene with the king with Grandpa, where he's like, "Tell me what happened," because at that point his dementia was taking over. And he was losing his memories, but when she settled in to start the story, it was like, ooh, okay, pay attention, because this is going to be good. Seyoung, delivering the good stuff.
She's amazing. She's just amazing. I love her so much.
Do we want to get into our quibbles?
I mean, we can gush for hours. I mean, then we just be like, in episode 1, I love this. In episode 2, like this, I feel like, to make this a fully rounded conversation.
The KThree is Jen, Marisa, and you. You are part of this K-drama community, and our podcast and our live chats on YouTube are supported by members like you. Check out our memberships, and you can support us for as little as $3 a month or more. And each tier gets you access to great K-drama perks, like a calendar every month with premieres and finales, watch parties with some of your closest K-drama BFFs, private Zoom chats where we can squee and quibble all we want and it'll stay private in that room, and a little bit more, and you might even get some K-drama goodies. So go to Ko-fi.com, that's ko-fi.com/the K3, click on memberships and support the K-drama Coffee Break.
I mean, I had quibbles. I'm not going to lie. Like, did I love the show? Yes. Did I have some, I did run into problems being a modern woman with some of the things that occurred in this storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest quibble was that they extended it with another episode 17, which to me felt like it was Junho fan service, and it put the attention on him and his character when I wish that it had come back around to Deokim's character. And by extending it another episode, I wouldn't say it was a disservice so much as it bummed me out, because not where I wanted them to end it.
I felt that they could have easily ended the story itself at the end of 16. If you want to get into how much her death affected him, how much the death of his son, their son, and then her affected him moving forward, I feel like you could have crammed 16 and 17 together and maybe had like an hour and 45-minute finale episode, and we could have weeded out a lot of the extra.
Yeah.
But I think for me, my biggest quibble isn't even so much that I didn't understand where Deokim ended up. I understood the choice she made. I understood why she made the choice. I understood all of that. I think what frustrated me, and I get that he's the king, so it's not that I don't understand all of these pieces. It's just story-wise, it was like he would be his arrogant, kingly self, which was expected because he's a king. And then he would become like aggressively violent and threatening to her. That is where it almost seemed out of character when it would happen. Almost like I didn't know why we needed not a reminder, but it just seemed unnecessary. She already knows this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And so it made it difficult for me to be fully, even when the moment happens where he's like, you'll never see me again, and if I let go of your hand and blah, blah. He's already threatened her, and she basically says it to his face. So basically what you're doing to me is dragging me in here so that if I say no, I'm basically ruined as a woman. And really? And then and then for it to turn, and then all of a sudden they're lovey-dovey, I was kind of like, I did have some issues with that flow, if that makes sense.
So I do want to say, if you're new to this podcast, if you're new to the K3, and you are part of the K3 now, clearly we are modern American women, and I'm Asian Canadian, actually. But I'm not Korean. I'm Filipina. So we fully
let go from Detroit.
And we do want to put out, we're not Korean. We don't have the history. We are, looking at this from a Westerner's lens, and, from whatever our education, our Eurocentric education is. So we really appreciate it when, our K-drama BFFs like DDuck8926 spend a lot of time making comments, writing comments and helping us understand historical context, making recommendations on other historical films that help us understand context and storytelling, because it's different. We are raised on a Western Hollywood, diet of a different way of storytelling. And so sometimes these things, the way they're told, are jarring to us. And I don't know if it's because of what we grew up watching or how we understand stories are told, or if it's, like, I think what I'm saying is, does this make, if you are Korean or Korean American, did these kinds of scenes make sense to you? Are we missing something?
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. I just, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or if it's just a feminist thing. I don't know where that falls into the situation. It's not that I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand his status as the king.
Yeah.
And we mentioned it in the live. I just felt in 7 Days My Queen, they flowed through whatever that was a little bit better.
Yeah, because it sounds like to me like you felt like they were making a point that had already been made, and they did it in a very obtuse kind of way. When he choked her, as one example.
She choked her, and then he basically threatened her with not only her livelihood, or he threatened her with basically her reputation.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
It was tough to then be like, they're so happy. That's great. He got what he wanted. Like, I get that he's the king and he always gets what he wants, but I'm also kind of like, that is.
I wonder if it's kind of an explanation of the trauma, the intergenerational trauma, and also the trauma of the royal family, and that these are the rulers of the land, and that these are not Disney princes, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's a point we've hit on a few times in this podcast, is that these are highly complex characters, and that in K-dramas often we don't get that kind of complexity. But was it to an extreme that was hard for us to comprehend? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. I think Jen's clearly having some issues with some of these
you know what?
points.
As we're saying this, I was about to bring up another point, and I think maybe if they would have, and maybe these two are combined. Maybe because I feel like they also, because Deokim's big thing was she does care about the king, and she is basically in love with the crown prince, but she can never have him. Like, she's only going to be one of many. And so that for her was not satisfying, right? And so that's why she was always saying no. And we all could understand that, right? But we never even knew that the crown prince already had a crown princess and already had a queen from like early on.
Yeah.
And so I felt like there were layers that we could have seen more inside of what was going on with Deokim and the king himself and the prince himself, with those additional layers that maybe would have made some of those scenes not come out of left field sometimes. Because I thought it was because it is a fascinating study of dynamics, right? Power dynamics. What happens when your crown prince falls in love with one of his court ladies? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what is that dynamic? And you already have a king, and I felt like that story alone was powerful and incredible, right?
Right, because we know that successful relationships are predicated on honesty, communication, equality, things that you cannot get when you are, head concubine to the king.
Like, I get that. It's not that I don't understand the power dynamics. Yeah. I get the power dynamics.
Yeah.
It just, that was probably
that's your biggest quibble.
It made it challenging for me to root for her going back into the castle or the palace, and then the whole thing that went down after that. I mean, but then they were lovely. After everything happened, I was like, oh my God, I love them so much. So it was, I felt like it was a conflicting, I felt conflicted when it was over, because my heart was like, run, girl, run. And she even says that. She's like, listen, if I wasn't into you, I would have done everything humanly possible to get the hell out of here. And so that made me feel better. But I also, I wish we would have seen more of that from her, maybe talking to friends or talking to someone. We got a little bit of it, but I think I would have maybe enjoyed a little bit more of that.
Yeah, the friends really fell away by the end of the series, and I thought it was so rooted in their friendship. So, but there's a reason why we call these quibbles and not devastating problems that we have with a K-drama. It's like,
right, exactly.
Deal breakers. I mean, they're quibbles.
None of these are
no.
Clearly, none of these were deal breakers because we watched it all the way to the end and love it and are doing a podcast about it because we had more thoughts.
That's right. So, I mean, overall, this was a big recommend. I mean, this is one of my favorite shows of 2021.
Yes. I don't
Is that a yes but or a yes and?
It's so funny because I thoroughly enjoyed it and I would highly recommend it, but I don't think I could ever rewatch it.
Oh, even though, yeah. Like we've rewatched The Crown Clown. Mm-hmm. If I had the time, I would rewatch as devastating as that one was. Right? 7 Days Queen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, but was it magnificent and worth every minute of viewing? Absolutely. Okay, maybe not 17, but up until 17, every minute of viewing was worth my time for sure.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a huge recommend.
It deserves all the NBC awards it got.
Right? I know, right? And then, now here's my question though, Marisa, because we always screw this up every year. Do they qualify for the big awards, the Bexing Awards this year, or are they next? I'm always hazy on when it counts.
What?
I feel like they should be up for some Bexings this year.
Was it Crash Landing on You that seemed to have appeared in multiple years?
Goblin was up for awards, I felt like, for years.
Yeah, I think we should be seeing them, coming up in the Bexings, which are when? In the spring, right? Late spring, I think.
I feel like it. I mean, listen, the last couple of years are all just one big blur, so I have no markers for anything anymore. But I feel like the spring, yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. This is what I kept thinking over and over and over again as we were watching 17. I would love to see someone write a reincarnation story about these two characters and cast Seyoung and Junho, and I would devour that. Make her a high-powered chaebol daughter or just her own company and have him be like a video editor or something. I would be all over that shit.
Oh my God. Like when Seong Deokim and Jung So-min appeared in another drama, like as angels or after the light. What was that called? Not The Light in Your Eyes.
Yes. 1,000
stars falling from the sky.
Stars falling from the sky. Yes. That was so good. Oh my God. Right.
So yes, that's our K-drama request to start off the new year.
That would be fantastic. I would love to see that.
It would.
Any final thoughts, Marisa?
No, I think we have covered the gamut on this one.
We have. I mean, again, highly recommend it. If you get a chance, check out our live again. There's even more conversation with things that we didn't cover here in the comments or in the chat, and then go ahead and feel free to leave your comments and we will jump on those as well. But until next time, thank you so much for joining us. We are the KThree. I'm Jen.
I'm Marisa, and you are part of this K-drama coffee break. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.